Well, here's something to pay attention to. Ontario is set to run out of landfill space in less than a decade, but the trade war could shrink that timeline.
Just imagine if tomorrow President Trump, and don't put it past him, President Trump says, we aren't taking any more of Ontario's waste. What do we do? There's 40%.
As if there wasn't enough to worry about. Ontario is the only province that sends a substantial amount of its garbage south of the border. That was Premier Doug Ford announcing he's reopening the York 1 landfill site in case the White House decides to clamp down on garbage shipments. So joining us with more on this is Calvin Lakin. He is the co-investigator of the Waste Wiki project at York University. Welcome to Your Morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Why is one of the largest provinces in this country about to run out of space for landfills?
So I think for many years, we didn't necessarily invest in landfill infrastructure, and I think that's actually a good thing. So one of Ontario's priorities was to focus on diversion initiatives, recycling, et cetera, things that keep waste out of landfills. Unfortunately, we just continue to produce more and more waste, and we have less and less places to put it. So the impending landfill crisis was one in the making for a very long time.
Ontario sends about a third of its garbage south of the border. Most of that goes to Michigan, and Premier Ford says this trade war could threaten those shipments, meaning the border could shut down. The state is also proposing to raise its landfill tipping fees from 36 cents per ton to $5 per ton. So what would happen if Ontario couldn't ship garbage south of the border?
I think it would be catastrophic. And it's a very real risk, as there is a historical precedent of Michigan denying or refusing to accept waste from Ontario. So I think would cause a severe disruption to not only the cost of landfilling, but just the immediate concern of where do we put our waste? We simply do not have the capacity. And right now we're very, very reliant on U.S. sources, which I think is not tenable in the long term.
We mentioned that Ontario is the only province that sends a large portion of its waste to the States, but every other province seems to be able to manage its waste locally. So what are the other provinces doing that this one isn't?
So I think a lot of that comes down to like proximity, well, three things: proximity, logistics, and economics. And so when you look at where waste is generated in Ontario and what states we are in proximity to, it's very, very cheap to actually landfill in U.S. states. And significantly cheaper than trying to landfill that same material in Ontario or attempting to recycle it in Ontario. So I think one of the reasons why you see other provinces not necessarily pursue this as a viable option is that it's simply not economically tenable. However, if it was economically competitive as a form of disposal, I would bet my bottom dollar that a lot of those provinces would be shipping waste there too.
Even if nothing changes with the U.S. and Ontario continues to send its garbage there in the same amount, a recent landfill report shows that the dumping sites here are going to reach capacity by 2034, so less than 10 years. So, even without changes at the border, what does Ontario's plan look like to try and address the shortage?
Well, as an example, so trying to expand the Dresden landfill to add additional capacity, I think you're just adding a little bit of runway, but not addressing the actual systemic root problems. And really the systemic root problems that we produce way too much waste. And so instead of emphasizing things like reuse programs or encouraging more effective forms of recycling or alternative forms of technology, such as waste to energy, I think that what the province is doing is kicking the can down the road, but ultimately we'll have to face that crisis and say we need to do something different, and it can't be burying it in the ground.
Calvin, this is one of those follow the money questions, and that is we privatize out things like recycling programs, for example, which are supposed to divert away from landfills. Obviously, those programs aren't as successful, and we know from investigations even done by this network that a lot of that waste that's supposed to be recycled ends up either in a landfill or having to be burned because it's just not cleaned properly or can't be sorted properly. So what needs to be taken apart and restructured in order for us to be able to manage our waste in this province better?
So this is my personal opinion. So I'm actually highly critical of Ontario's approach towards managing what we call mechanical recycling. So the technology we use to recycle is actually very inefficient for the types of packaging or the types of materials that are being produced today. And so I think instead of relying on, say, the blue box and assuming that we can recycle our way out of this waste problem, we need to be investing in things like chemical recycling, waste to energy, pyrolysis, new technologies that other parts of the world have adopted with great success, because it's been demonstrated over the past 10 years that you can try to recycle as much as you want, but it doesn't solve the underlying problem that the materials just physically cannot be managed given existing infrastructural constraints.
I'm so glad you're looking into this, Calvin, with the Waste Wiki project out at York University. I always think garbage is Canada's dirty secret. Calvin Lakin, great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.